For the television show, should Pittsburgh stick with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback?
No, I don't think so. I think we saw the ceiling with Aaron Rodgers last year, and it's not where the Steelers want to go. I think the fans, and honestly, I think the team in general have been trying to put together this, like, it's whoever's available quarterback strategy, and they've been disappointed a number of years in a row. You've moved on from Mike Tomlin. I think that gives you the opening to finally move on from this kind of quarterback strategy of just getting who's available and start to try to develop someone new and take shots with available free agents and in the draft and the quarterbacks you already have on the roster.
And I know people are connecting the dots with McCarthy and Rodgers back to Green Bay, rightfully so. I don't know if that's going to matter at this point. Question number 2, should Shedeur Sanders still be the starter in Cleveland?
Yeah, I think he should be the starter given what he showed as a rookie. There were some low lows and there were some high highs. There's a little bit of promise there. I don't think that they should completely hand the position over to him and not continue to look for available options. The high highs were not that high, but I think he's shown enough that it's worth considering that he's going to continue to develop and be their quarterback answer long term. But I think it's really important to not fully commit to him, but go ahead and bring in some other options if there are some available. I know they have 2 first-round picks that they could use on the quarterback, or they could bundle to go get another franchise quarterback.
And Dylan Gabriel, they drafted him a year ago. You think they wanted to make that a competition, one that, due to injury, but some decent play to Shedeur, he ended up winning at the end of the season. Okay, what team does Max Crosby turn into an immediate Super Bowl contender?
Yeah, I think it's just about all of the ones that are on the doorstep. I really like the 49ers in particular as a team that he could potentially help. I also like the Bears more than anyone else, as I think that they have a defense that's built around having a dominant defensive line, but they don't actually yet have a dominant defensive line. And I think Max Crosby being an addition to that team that's already shown that they can get into the playoffs and be competitive with one of the top teams in the Rams. I think adding Max Crosby to that improves that defense. They become less reliant on turnovers to have success and start having a more of a stable, consistent down-to-down defense.
Yeah, gentlemen, he is that type of player. He can come in, make an immediate impact, take you from a good defense to a great defense. So having said that, who do you think is the best fit for Crosby?
Well, I got to go with Dallas again, because until you replace someone like Micah Parsons, you're going to be looking. And what Max Crosby does is he's going to create opportunities for others, because there's going to be so many double teams that will go his way. So, again, when you're looking at what Dallas has, they're starting with these 2 first-round picks. And, look, we know how great their offense is. They're not going to lose George Pickens. And to Deke's point, this is a team that would be on the doorstep with Max Crosby.
And the thing of it is, too, Jerry Jones got so much grief for the Parsons trade a year ago. If he could package that into something like this, I mean, would you agree that this would be a good fit?
Be a great fit, but where wouldn't he be a great fit? I mean, you talk about teams that were in the playoffs this year that could use this. Talk about the Bears. Talk about the Patriots, right? They could use an edge rusher like this. Go back to last year's playoffs and talk about the Washington Commanders, who desperately need a player like this in order to, jumpstart things for them on defense. This is, if the Raiders let it be known at some point this week to the NFL that Max Crosby is available in trade, there will be a line out their door, whatever suite, whatever hotel they're staying at next week in Indianapolis at the Combine, for people to talk about potential Max Crosby offers. He would be that popular. He would be affordable. He's 28 years old. The acquiring team would have to pay him about $30 million each of the next 2 years. For a high-end pass rusher, you do that in a second.
And look, he is a culture setter, which is great, especially with year one of a new head coach, guys. But knowing how far you are away in that division, reluctantly, if I was them, I would consider it. I would hold an auction to Graz's point, and you're looking at multiple high picks for him.
And speaking of auction, they also hold the #1 overall pick. We believe that's going to be Fernando Mendoza, quarterback, Indiana. So would you, Mike T, as our resident GM, say, you know what? Let's dangle that out there and try to acquire a bunch of assets for the top pick?
No, I'm not even answering the call. I am drafting Fernando Mendoza, but John Spytek and Tom Brady, as the stewards of the franchise, have to set the tone and the expectations from day one. I am not necessarily even playing him this year. Look, we're going to get Colton Miller back, a good left tackle. He's been hurt. But this offensive line has a ways to go. We saw it ruin David Carr a generation ago amongst other quarterbacks that struggled early. So get the quarterback when he's available, because you never know what will happen, even though there's a lot of quarterbacks next year, Matt. but I would draft him and then I would wait and see about playing him.
Meek?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be open. Like, I'm not like Mike T. I'd take the call, but I think inevitably you will not end up with a deal that's good enough to move up the quarterbacks. It's the most important position. You have an opportunity to fill that. You don't try to get cute. But I do think it's super unrealistic what Mike T is saying, that you could go through a whole season with the #1 overall pick quarterback and not have to play him at any point. This isn't Kansas City with Mahomes coming in that's 13-3. This is the Raiders. They're going to put that quarterback in at some point this season.
Next year's draft class, though, would make me tenders. That could happen. Gross, start us off.
Yeah, I think the key here is to understand something crazy happens every year in the NFL we don't see coming. Why wouldn't the Browns at least listen on Myles Garrett? Yes, they extended him last offseason after he had demanded a trade, but the contract, the way they did the contract, it doesn't make it untradeable. They'd take a dead money hit. The acquiring team would get Myles Garrett for a pretty good price. You might be able to get an awful lot for a guy that just won unanimous Defensive Player of the Year.
All right, let's bring back Meek for the first time this hour. Do we like the idea of Myles Garrett getting traded?
Absolutely. I think that he would go down in history as quite possibly the best defensive player of all time if we had some like playoff resume from Myles Garrett. That's the only thing that's working against him is we don't have any long runs where he made dominant plays. We saw that with Aaron Donald. It really changed the way that we're going to remember Aaron Donald when he made those 2 incredible plays at the end of the Super Bowl to clinch that for him. I think any team who is serious about winning a championship should be willing to give up a lot for Myles Garrett. And when he was like kind of on the block last year, everyone, I think, should have been interested in now. People should be going after him the same way that they did for Micah Parsons when he came up, because we saw how his impact changed the trajectory for the Packers. Myles Garrett could do that and more for any team that's interested.
I'm all in. And the perfect team is the Dallas Cowboys. You got 2 first-round picks this year. And look, you're actually upgrading our pass rush with Myles Garrett's actually a better pass rusher than Micah Parsons. And if you're the Cleveland Browns and you had Mason Graham, Carson Schlesinger, and you load in multiple first-round picks, that's a great way to go with
from the DFW area. Going home could be a fit, but the Micah Parsons deal opened up a lot of possibilities for the Dallas Cowboys. Again, these are blockbusters that we would be blindsided by if they happen. Appropriately named blindsided blockbusters. Let's take it to the AFC North. Gross, give us one there.
The last time Lamar Jackson and the Ravens tried to do a contract extension, it got ugly before it got resolved. He demanded a trade. They eventually got a deal done. That deal needs to be amended now, or else his cap number will be $74.5 million this year. They have to go to Lamar Jackson about a contract extension. What if it goes poorly again? Would the Ravens think about taking calls?
Mike T, you liked it?
No. I mean, Myles Garrett. This one's tough because he's only 29. He just turned 29 a couple of weeks ago. And if I'm Jesse Minter, one of the reasons I want the job of the Baltimore Ravens, I have a superstar 2-time MVP in his prime. I know he's expensive. We got to get that figured out. I could see Myles Garrett getting traded before Lamar.
Hey.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously it'd be crazy from the team's perspective, but I think what Graz is pointing out is important. Is like a lot of the leverage is in Lamar Jackson's camp right now, considering that he has a plus $70 million cap hit. They kind of have to restructure it. And if he chooses to tell them that he doesn't want it restructured and he would only be willing to restructure with someone else, then he kind of forces their hand. So we're not in a situation where he's a free agent and they could potentially franchise tag him or transition tag him or do something like that to make it so that they get something back. Right now, he's kind of like, we figure out the contract I want, or I don't do anything, and that kind of cripples their ability to build out the rest of the roster and make a competitor, and then he could potentially force this move, but the team would be nuts to do it without him forcing it.
Again, we see something wild every offseason that we don't expect.
Like
every year.
Yeah, this is all speculative, right? Yeah. This is all just like because something in, like we did not see the Micah Parsons trade happening this time last year, and it ends up happening right before the season.
All right, let's stay in the AFC North. The last on this list, we want to put caveat, less than what, 5%?
Yeah,
less than 5%?
But I mean, like, Adam Schefter raised this possibility a month or so ago, so you got to take it at least a little seriously. What if Joe Burrow wanted out of Cincinnati? Can you even imagine what the offers would be like if that were to happen? We have no indication that he does. I don't think that he will, but again, I think the fact that Schefter brought it up on this show a couple months ago gives us license to at least speculate. It would be something. This would be the move that I think would get teams lining up and, really dumping entire drafts to try and get a guy like that.
We talked about this in the meeting. The one really interesting one to me is the Rams. They got 2 first-round picks. Matt Stafford is very close to the end. And look, we've already seen Jared Goff and Matt Stafford get traded from one another for a ton of picks as well. So to me, if this ever happened, which I think is highly unlikely, if I'm the Rams, if I'm Leslie, the GM of the Rams, I am not getting off the phone and saying, tell me what the bill is for Joe Burrow, because now you're going to go from Stafford to Joe Burrow. With that defense, you are set up for a long time.
Dominique, we know this was fact that Joe Burrow, he wasn't happy towards the end of last season. I mean, could that lead into one of the most blindsided blockbusters we've ever seen?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is similar to the Lamar Jackson case in that the Bengals would not be able to live this down. It's very Luka Doncic-esque in that it's not a move that you could be willing to make unless it's something that the player forced. Like, if it was something that Joe Burrow decided that he didn't want to be there anymore and he wouldn't show up, then that's something that I think they would consider and they'd be willing to do. And the Rams, I think, is a good idea because they've shown that they can do it. They've done it before. But I think Joe Burrow's at a different point in his career than obviously Matthew Stafford was with the Lions when they made that move. But this would be something that Joe Burrow would have to force because the Bengals, they might burn that facility down if they sent their franchise quarterback away without him forcing his way out.
See, that's where we screwed this up. We should have named it the Luka Doncic of the NFL.
There you go.
That's what the segment should have been named. Because everyone knows how horrible that move was.
Well, we just came up with it a couple hours ago, so it was a rush job.
But we have Matthew Stafford playing the part of Anthony Davis.
That's true. Holiday weekend. It's a Monday.
Yeah,
We're just
I
working
thought it was
through
okay.
things.
I thought it worked.
The Celsius hadn't hit just yet.
Great
Next
work.
hour, Luka Doncic. Guess what? There is no next hour. Trick question. Coming up is a Rodgers-McCarthy reunion worth the risk, or should Pittsburgh press reset? Plus,